Hi, guys, welcome to the Late Night Drives podcast. In this week's episode, we have Sai again with us to help unpack the crazy Hungarian GP. Hi, Sai, welcome back to the Late Night Drives podcast. We're here to discuss the Hungarian Grand Prix. What a fantastic race! I think that's probably the only way I can describe it in one word if I had to. It was probably the most fun race of the year, at least for me. I don't know about you.
Thanks for having me. I think this has to be up there with Baku, I guess. As
Yeah, I
two of the
mean, yeah.
like what happened, right? I think for like the craziness quotient, Baku and the Hungarian Grand Prix, for like the quality of the race and just kind of keeping you on edge was probably like the French Grand Prix, right? I think it was a clean race, but it just kind of like kept you on edge throughout, right? Strategy and things like that. But
Dude, for
yeah,
me, I
definitely.
just love wet races, man. Like
Oh
it
yeah,
just it brings out uh I would like to say like the best in drivers and the worst in drivers.
yeah. The crazy thing is this wasn't even like a wet race. It was like a wet lap,
It
and
was
that
a
was
wet lap,
enough.
exactly. But that
It was
messed
a lap.
up the race.
It messed up everything after that.
It messed it up enough. Anyway,
Yeah.
I let me start off by saying I think quali was pretty straightforward. The usual suspects qualified where we expected them to. But I think in the lead up, the only one team that was kind of on the back foot right from the start was, I think, Alfa Romeo. And we'll come to
Yeah.
that more in the race. But I mean, come on, like during practice sessions, you're having like trouble with pit stops and unsafe releases. I just don't think that shouldn't be happening, right?
Yeah, they looked especially amateurish, I
Yeah.
would say this weekend. And it wasn't just something that, like you said, happened over a session. This was all throughout practice. Then I don't think they had anything go wrong in quali except a really poor qualifying
They
session.
just didn't do well in qualifying. Yeah.
They just didn't show up, right?
Yeah.
And then in the race, the unsafe release, they knocked out one of the Haas's Mazepin to broken suspension.
Mm, mm.
Who, Kimi? It was Kimi, I think,
Kimi,
right?
it
For
was
10
Kimi,
seconds.
yeah.
Yeah, like you could see him shaking his head when he got into the pits.
I think
Like,
he
it's like,
post race he also came out and said, right, that what was I supposed to do if the lights weren't working on the
yeah,
lights that they have to indicate whether the
yeah, yeah,
driver can be
yeah.
like safely released and stuff.
Well, it's not really his call to make, right? He just
Yeah.
goes when they tell him to go,
I
right?
think
So
Giovinazzi had the same issue, right? Like it wasn't his
yeah,
call and
Joe
like it was
Martin
the team's call,
wasn't his
right?
call. Yeah, exactly. So they're just trained to react to the sign as soon as they can. And it's a bonus if they look in their mirrors, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was unfortunate, and yeah, I think they're just one of those teams that I feel have, Haas has kind of not been developing their car at all. Um, I feel like Alfa Romeo has probably slid back the most in the last like 3 years. Like ever since the Ferrari engine debacle. I think the first season when Kimi was there, they were doing, they was getting some pretty consistent points. A few Q3 appearances, and then with the secret Ferrari engine agreement, they
Settlement.
went
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
really far backwards. And the engine seems to be better, but Alfa Romeo doesn't seem to be any better this season. In fact, I think Williams are ahead of them on points now too. So I think
Just
they're
because
in
of
ninth.
just because
Yeah,
of
yeah. But I would say that
decision.
they deserve it too. I feel like they've been the ones who've been, flirting with Q3 and those points finishes the most consistently out of those eighth, ninth, and tenth positions with Haas, Alfa Romeo, and Williams. So
But to
yeah,
be fair, I mean, Alpha has like Giovinazzi and Kimi both have been flirting around that 10th position, like whether it's in qualifying or in the race, right? It's just it just so happens that I mean we'll come to the race and what
yeah,
like transpired here,
yeah,
which like got Williams ahead of them, but I don't know. I agree with you. I think they suffered majorly because of the Ferrari engine issues. And I think luck hasn't been on their side, and I don't think strategically they've been very good. And we'll come to the race. Let's get into the
Yeah,
race, right? Right off the bat, I mean, wet race, which everybody was predicting, like all sessions were going to be there was going to be rain in all sessions, but
yeah,
which never turned up except like for the start of the race. And yeah, so with wet weather came like this whole, going into the unknown where the drivers didn't have any braking points. All the rubber was sort of like washed off the tracks and stuff
yeah,
like that. But I think Alpha was one of the first, and Giovinazzi on the first formation lap came in and
yeah.
decided to like pit for hard tires, for slicks.
Yeah.
So I think they just like decided, look, screw this, we're gonna go for it, right? We're just gonna do something completely different to everybody
Yeah.
and like to, yeah,
But of all the tires to pit for, right? Like at
yeah,
that point in time, he chose a hard tire. Like,
yeah,
I mean, I remember like even the commentators were like, "What's going on over here?" And it seemed like a brilliant move to see him dive into the pits, and you're like, "Oh,
yeah,
maybe he's gonna go for full wets. Maybe he's gonna try something different, right?" And he goes on the hard tire, and you're like, "Okay, he's gonna go for a one stop and like pit on lap 50 or something and hope things work out for him."
yeah.
And they just did not. Um,
No, but
yeah,
then
they were
again,
all
I
over.
think and coming to the major talking point of
Yeah,
this race, which was and Stroll actually taking out like
yeah,
five drivers, right, and damaging
yeah,
two others. So I
yeah.
mean, racing incident, Bottas's fault, Stroll's fault. Do they deserve their penalties? What are your thoughts?
I mean, the Bottas incident. Putting aside all of the stuff online about like the best teammate in F1 and stuff, it was really, really amateurish. Like you have an entire race to make up positions, and he just lost what? I mean, he started P2. I think it was down to P4. I think, right? He
Yeah,
lost
he
to
was
both
down to
Lando
P4.
and
Yeah,
P4, P5, right? Like big deal, right? I mean, the conditions are going to change. You know that there are going to be opportunities later on, but it just reeked of desperation, right? And I'm not even sure what he was trying to do, because if he outbraked himself where there was a gap, it's a bit more understandable. He just outbraked himself and just went straight into Lando, and then Lando cascaded to Max, and that was, and then Bottas just went straight T-boned Sergio Perez,
yeah,
and that was like you had the basically you know four out of the five front runners out of the Grand Prix
yep,
in one corner,
yep.
and
So in one
yeah.
corner, Bottas took out Perez, Norris, and damaged Ricciardo and Verstappen's cars.
Was it Bottas on Ricardo, or was it Leclerc like going into Ricardo?
Oh,
I
right,
can't
right,
remember.
right. Stroll just ran straight into Leclerc and he
Yeah, I mean,
damaged
like,
Ricciardo. I think
Stroll,
he
like,
tagged Ricciardo, right? Yeah, yeah, you're
that
right.
was a very surprising one, because Stroll comes across as quite the reliable wet weather driver. Like he tends to have these good races in variable conditions, and he doesn't seem the kind of driver who kind of takes these kinds of decisions. He might not be the quickest, but he seems quite sensible. And to see him just kind of, I mean, he was halfway on the grass, I think, at one point. I don't know what he was doing, and he basically like mounted Leclerc after that. Leclerc just went straight into Ricardo,
No,
and I
I
think
completely agree. Sorry. Yeah.
yeah, I think Ricardo had some diffuser damage after that,
Yeah, he
and
struggled through the
his
race with
car
that
wasn't the
damage.
same. Yeah, so it was, yeah. So you had yeah, four cars out of the race and two cars severely compromised, right?
Five
You
cars
had
out of the
Ricardo,
race and two cars.
five cars, two
Yeah,
cars severely
yeah.
compromised. So it's, yeah. I mean, if you include Stroll, yeah, completely
Yeah,
correct.
yeah. So Bottas, Stroll, Leclerc, Perez, Norris, they were
But
knocked
out
out
of the
in the
first
first
corner.
500 meters of the
Yeah,
race.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, I completely agree with you. Just Stroll has historically been a good wet weather driver, right? He's done decently in wet races, and I think he enjoys wet conditions as well. It was quite shocking to see him make that move, and
Yeah,
honestly, I don't know what he was thinking. Right, there was no space. He was always going to be on the grass. there was always going to
Yeah,
be no grip because the grass is, I mean, it's going to be wet, right? It's raining.
yeah,
There's hardly
yeah.
any grip on the tarmac. How the
There's
hell are you going to
nothing.
like, make a
Grass.
move on the grass, right? So,
I was looking for an angle, a replay angle where I was trying to figure out whether he was trying to avoid somebody else, and that's kind of what got him in that situation. But I couldn't find it. It looks like he went there on his own accord.
so
Like
basically,
I couldn't.
I initially thought, and I think a lot of people did, that he was just trying to avoid the Bottas incident and what was happening in front of him. But I think he was behind people like Vettel and
Oh
Esteban
yeah,
Ocon, right?
yeah,
When he
yeah.
started. So if they could slow down and get by unscathed, I don't see why he felt the need to like take avoiding action and go down. Like you said, I think it was just like a move he was trying to make or what. I
Didn't he
really
get
don't know.
ahead of Vettel in the start though?
Oh,
Because I know
he got
Vettel had
ahead
a
of Vettel, yes, but
yeah,
he was still behind Esteban, right?
he's still behind Esteban, and so you had Ocon and Vettel just like letting all these folks like crash into each other, end up on the outside of the track, and they kind of tucked in on the inside
Yeah,
and went
brilliant
through.
for them, huh? Like,
Brilliant, yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, imagine Vettel's like probably poorest start, which I
Yeah,
mean, it resulted in a
he's
point.
actually been really good off the line this year.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
the first start.
Anyway, so yeah, Bottas basically ran into both Red Bulls.
Bottas
Verstappen,
5.0.
yeah, it
Whatever it is.
Verstappen's entire like right side of his car's bargeboard was like completely off,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
how the Red Bull team in the red flag managed to repair that car and get him back
yeah,
onto track, and him
yeah,
actually finishing in the points. I mean,
yeah.
testament to that guy. He doesn't give up. Oh, like it was
He doesn't
brilliant.
give up. I think that team also is built of some pretty tough stuff,
Yeah,
right? Like you've seen them kind of, they're not the type of team to give up, and I think that's gonna serve them well throughout this championship. As soon as we come back from summer break, um, there were some interesting things online that I read. Peter Windsor was asking, why did they go ahead and replace the floor, for the car? Instead, they kind of just taped up the barge boards and you know
mm.
and he was definitely with the compromised car, but they should have just gone ahead and replaced the floor. So it'd be interesting to hear from them, maybe before the next race as to why they made that decision because they certainly had the time to do it. And so that
Really,
would have been the
I
first.
thought they would have struggled with that because it was just
I
15.
mean,
I think 15 or 20 minutes, right? I don't think it was longer than
oh
that.
yeah, I mean, but this is Red Bull we're talking about. Was it last year on the formation lap? Was it Hungary where Max
It was
Verstappen crashed
Hungary.
out of the
It
top?
was Hungary.
He just, fixed his car and he finished. I think he finished P2 or P3 that
Yeah.
race. So they're definitely quite resourceful, and I think if there's one team that could have done it, it's them. But yeah, I mean, a lot of credit to Max also for just remaining interested throughout that race.
Yeah.
Like he could have just kind of thrown in the towel and just kind of paraded around for whatever 69, 70 laps, but he didn't, right? And I think he was stuck behind Mick Schumacher for
A long
like
time.
10 or 11 laps.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Christian Horner said that he had like essentially the same amount of downforce as the Haas after all that damage, but he persisted.
Christian
Finally got
Horner
past
being
him.
as politically
Yeah,
correct
Christian
as he
Horner. Yeah,
normally
yeah,
is.
yeah. I'm
Yes.
surprised he didn't say that he had half the downforce of the Haas, half the power, half the downforce. Yeah, running a diesel engine, whatever, right? So yeah, but he finally got past him, and then I think he got past Daniel Ricciardo also, right, to
Yeah.
get that last point.
Yeah.
But yeah, he hung in there. It's a point. And then if you think about the delta, that's 1 point, and then Gasly gets the fastest lap in the end.
Yeah.
You can imagine Helmut Marko calling Franz Tost to get that boy off the track.
Yeah.
The fastest lap. So
You
it
won't be
could have
surprised
been,
with that, right?
yeah. So had he retired, that delta could have been,
Yeah.
more than that, right? 2 laps. So and I think he also owes a few other folks in the field some brownie points for holding up Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah. Let's talk about the race leaders after the first lap, right? Actually, you know what? Before we get into that, let's talk about the restart. How ridiculous was it to see every single driver but Hamilton pit after the formation lap and only Hamilton take the start?
Yeah, it was quite comical to watch on TV. It was like watching some sort of an exhibition where there's an F1 car on display and you're watching the acceleration. But it was really interesting to see um, the chaos out of the pits, right? I think George Russell just overtook everybody and undertook
Yeah.
everybody. Yeah, and just kind of ended up. What is he? He was in P2, I think,
He was
right?
in P2, but he had to give up the
Yeah,
places.
he has to give up the
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
I was actually surprised. He could have got a much bigger penalty actually for that. I felt.
No, but I think he
So he
gave
just
it
got.
up immediately, right? So,
He did, yeah. He was. I
yeah,
mean, he was asked by the FA.
yeah,
I think.
whatever. Like, I mean, he complied
Right.
immediately. So,
Yeah.
that pit stop in the formation lap was crazy. I mean, I wish like we got to see exactly what was going on, but I think there was so much going on. I think Sainz lost out in that pit stop to both Tsunoda and Latifi. Somehow he came
Yeah.
out behind them. According to
Yeah.
Binotto, it was because they followed procedure and had a flawless stop, but the Williams and AlphaTauri team didn't.
Held him
Who
up.
knows?
Who
Uh,
knows? Yeah.
yeah, because like I said, like I really wish we could have seen what was going on, but I think there was so much like
It happened too fast.
happening, right? And yeah, I think like at the end of the day, traditionally the race start they show the grid, and it was only
Yeah.
Hamilton who was on the grid.
Yeah. Yeah. With the
Uh,
safety car behind him.
with the safety car behind him. I've never seen anything like that. I mean, I think it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Um, what were they thinking by not pitting him? Like, any thoughts on that?
I'm not sure they were thinking. Um, I do think that there is some merit to being a contrarian, in these kinds of conditions, right? But I think what happens is when you are in a position to lose everything, you get really, really defensive, right? And I think that's kind of what happened with Mercedes, right? And so, they felt like, well, if everybody's doing this, then we got to kind of hold fort, right? And just not do anything, right? And that was their strategy. Instead of doing something, we're P1 at the end of the first lap. Yeah, the conditions are changing, but since everybody's doing this, maybe we'll just play it safe. And I think they played it too safe, right? Because I think the bottom line is, had they pitted, they probably would have won the race because Hamilton would have. I mean, even if he ended up in traffic, he would have ended up like P6 and would have avoided a pit stop later on, right? And then he wouldn't have got held up in traffic in a second stop. A lot of things would have unfolded quite differently. But I think they were just really, really defensive. But had they looked at it a little deeply, they would have realized that they're, half of the field that could actually, or anybody who could actually compete with a Mercedes was out of that race by that point.
Yep.
There was nobody even close that was going to match them on pace, right? So
Yeah.
he had the car to go through the field. They just needed to make sure that they kept their head together with the strategy. And at that point, it was a big mistake. But like so many of Lewis and Mercedes races, sometimes these mistakes don't really cost them anything. Maybe a position or two, right? That's it.
I mean, it's
They just seem to
brilliant.
come
It's brilliant how quickly they changed their strategies. I mean, he pitted fairly early on for the
Oh yeah.
second time or whatever you want to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, it was brilliant that he seems to be the only one who was on what, effectively a two-stop strategy.
He was
Right?
on
Yeah.
mediums, and I mean, he was just carving through the field.
Yeah.
Especially after.
Hards and then the mediums.
I wasn't sure he was going to pit a second time, but I guess they were super confident that he would have the pace, when he pitted on the mediums.
I think they've done that before, right? In this year, like
I forgot what race that was, where I think, he was kind of going back and forth with them on the strategy, right?
Yeah, and
they were like,
and
he
we
caught up.
have the confidence, and it was like he pulled out a second lap on Verstappen, right? So
was it the first race?
It was the first race, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was Bahrain, I think.
Yeah. It was Bahrain.
So, I think they kind of panicked there at that first stop and said, okay, we'll just do what we're doing and see what happens.
Yeah, and it worked out for them. I mean, they had a recovery race in that sense where he finished P3, yeah. So, like I said, let's come down to the actual leader of the race post Lewis spitting and stuff, which was Esteban Ocon getting his first win at Hungary. He drove a pretty much flawless race, and I think Alpine as a team had pretty much a flawless race.
I think they changed his chassis before Silverstone, was it? Ocon, yes. I think the last. Yeah, because I think he wasn't even making it into Q2 for a while, the last few races.
Yeah,
And
it
so he
was
was
the
definitely
two Austrian Grand Prix, right? That he
Austrian Grand
really
Prix where he
struggled.
was
Yeah.
just like, I think he was behind even Williams
He didn't get
after
out of
Romania.
Q1.
He didn't get out of Q1, so
Yeah.
he's just kind of playing with the Haas's.
Yeah.
And he didn't do much better in the races. And so,
Yeah.
they changed his chassis, and usually you hear these things, and it usually doesn't lead to, swing in fortunes. But for him, definitely Silverstone was better, and then he outqualified Fernando in this race.
Mhm.
He did that quite frequently in the beginning of the season,
Yeah.
and he had a clean getaway, right? And he made it count. To be fair, when I saw that Seb was in P2, I didn't think that Ocon was going to hold on to the lead for a while. I just thought that this was going to be um, one of those things where in a few laps, Seb's going to get by, and it just never happened. And he was just kind of playing with that half a second to 1.5 seconds, gap between him and Ocon for the entire race, right? And it's a tough track to overtake, but I think Ocon deserves a lot of credit for, you know, driving 70 laps with somebody basically a second behind you at all times in every corner pretty much, and having DRS as well is just, that has to be mentally taxing. And he didn't put a foot wrong, no matter what happened. So,
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
fair.
at the end of the day, having like a four-time world champion, right,
Yeah,
who has all the experience that Sebastian Vettel does, it
right.
was brilliant, like for him to keep him back. And I think at points in the race, the Aston Martin was clearly the faster car,
Oh yeah, definitely,
right?
definitely. I think,
Especially with DRS. I mean, I think
yeah.
towards the end of the race, there was a blue flag
Oh
incident
yeah.
with Giovinazzi not moving out. I think Vettel
Oh
almost
yeah,
made the
yeah.
move
Vettel
there,
just put his
but
nose on the inside.
yeah, of
Yeah,
course, probably debatable, but probably helped out by his teammate Alonso keeping Hamilton behind. That was a
yeah.
great battle to watch.
Oh yeah, definitely. I
Yeah.
think there are two things that helped out Ocon in this race. I think one was definitely Fernando. You know, his defense was. I think it just went on for like 10 or 11 laps.
Yeah.
Where it was really really tough but fair stuff,
Yeah.
and he made that car as wide as possible. And that's when you realize that this is Fernando Alonso we're still talking about. This is still the same Fernando Alonso, right? And it's one thing to drive a car fast, like, and I know that he's been participating in a bunch of other series and stuff. I think he was even doing like the Dakar Rally and stuff. But to be able to still remember how to defend, right? I think that's something that's quite amazing that he still has those kind of skills, because racing in combat is something that I think will probably fade, right? Even if you still have the speed, because you're just not used to it. But he's not put a foot wrong this season, right? I mean, he started off a little slow, but I can't remember like one iffy off track with him or anything. He's just been thereabouts, patient. He knows exactly when he needs to make the charge, and he knows when to step back, and he's been very very measured. And so his defense of Lewis was really really good, really really impressive. And I thought it would end in tears a couple of occasions, but these guys are experienced campaigners, and I think Alonso also knew that Lewis had a lot more to lose at
Yeah.
this point, and so he could take some liberties with just making the car a little bit wider than it actually is. But yeah, that definitely helped Ocon, because I think maybe 3 or 4 more laps and that race was Hamilton's, right? Like he was just
Absolutely.
closing in on
Absolutely.
on Seb and Ocon. Like he finished what,
Yeah.
3 seconds behind them. He was
Yeah.
right there. I think Seb
He
can
was
see him in his.
there. By the time
He was
he
there.
overtook Sainz was like 3 seconds behind them. So
Sainz
yeah,
is yeah. Sainz is 6 seconds behind.
yeah,
So I think that was he was definitely helped by Alonso, and I think Aston Martin, if I remember correctly, had a slow pit stop as well. I think Vettel had a phenomenal outlap, because when Ocon got out, Vettel was right there. I
yeah.
was like, I was not expecting that to happen, because yeah, that pit stop I think was a good second slower than what Alpine
Seconds
had,
slower. Yeah,
and he just beat up with it with his outlap.
yeah.
And I was very surprised, and I thought he would actually get in the next lap, but then Ocon had a phenomenal outlap too, and it was business as
Yeah,
usual for the rest of the race.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Hamilton was able to like make up those places and stuff. I think he was told by his engineer to just push, like screw
Oh
the
yeah,
tires, just like push, like he
yeah,
had a
yeah,
fresh set of
definitely.
mediums towards the
Yeah,
end of the race. So I think that's what helped him,
yeah,
recuperate his
yeah.
time.
I think it's also like I said, they just have so much confidence in that car also. That it's a really really predictable, well-oiled race machine.
Mm.
And
Well-oiled race
so
team,
that
man.
they
I mean,
can
how quickly they changed their
oh, for sure.
strategy. Like
Yeah, yeah,
he
yeah,
came
definitely.
he came into pit and lap 20, like properly undercutting both Verstappen and Ricciardo, coming
Oh
out
yeah,
comfortably in
definitely,
front of them.
definitely.
That was like brilliant stuff. But yeah, unfortunate for Vettel that at the end of the day he got disqualified. Um,
Yeah,
which is
that was a
still
good
up for
drama.
debate whether it was the right thing by the stewards or not. I'm on the camp that at the end of the day, everybody has the same rules to follow,
Yeah, the rules are the
and
rules.
yeah, as you can't produce a liter of fuel, you're disqualified. It's as simple as that, right?
So Aston Martin is saying that they're confident that the fuel is in there, and so I think Sebastian Vettel has been reinstated until further notice at P2,
No,
is what I saw.
actually, about half an hour back, they
Oh man,
they've given out a final classification which has him
oh God.
disqualified.
Hamilton back to P2. Oh,
Yeah.
what's the lead now? It's
Uh,
another podium for signs that he can't celebrate.
yeah. Yeah.
Hashtag
Uh,
blessed. Um,
he's got an 8 point lead over Verstappen now. And as a team, Mercedes has pulled out like a proper 12 point lead over Red Bull.
yeah, Red Bull got to be careful here because I think this is going to come down to the second driver, and I think what we've seen from Perez since his race win in Baku has not been very good,
He's
right?
struggled
Like
all
it's
weekend, man.
he's been struggling. I don't remember. I mean, we remember Austria. I don't remember if it's Austria 1 or 2, where like he you know, tried to murder Charles Leclerc like twice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he got penalty for that, and then might have been race 2. But yeah, I haven't seen any. I mean, he's been on the podium only twice this year.
Dude, he was a second a
And
lap slower than Verstappen, like
yeah, it's and so
over
they were sitting
qualifying.
comfortably in that constructors championship for a while. Obviously, all the points have gone because Verstappen being knocked out of the races and Hamilton getting good results. But where did Bottas finish in the last race? He finished on the podium, right, last time.
Bottas finished on the podium
Yeah.
last race. Yeah.
Yeah, so they got a double podium finish last time, and Red Bull didn't get any points in the last race,
Yes.
right? Didn't Perez? Yeah, and this time around it's the same, right? And they got a second place. So it's been the delta's gone up by so 50 odd points
Mm.
they've gained over Red Bull in the last, and so that constructors championship also is opening up a little bit. And for all of Bottas's faults, I think he's still a better number two driver than Perez, definitely. Yeah,
I
Red Bull
agree.
has a difficult decision to make, because I think after Baku it looked like, hey, we found our man, and they were comfortably ahead in the constructors,
Yeah.
but the pendulum has swung a little bit, and I was reading the other day that he's not that far ahead of where Gasly and Albon were in terms of their pace versus
Mm.
Verstappen. It's just the car is better this year, and so the results have been a little bit better too. So Red Bull is going to have to. I don't think it's a slam dunk for Perez next year.
Though I think what very few people are talking about is, to be honest, there is a difference between Verstappen and Perez's car, right? Verstappen's car got some updates that Perez's car didn't get.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well,
I
which
don't
race was
know.
that? Only this
That was
race?
over Silverstone. I think it
No,
was
he's been
over the
he's.
second Austria and Silverstone.
I think he's been out qualifying him all year though, not driving him
Yeah,
all year.
but like I would just say that gap has
Yeah.
probably increased maybe because of that. But over one
Yep.
second, like it seems hard to
It's
believe, right?
it's hard to believe. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So Bottas might be available next year if Red Bull want to sign him. So
Hmm.
might be a better number two than Perez.
bring all his inside information from.
Yeah,
Mm,
definitely. He brings something. Yeah.
yeah. There were a few other drivers that I wanted to talk about in the race. One was Carlos Sainz. Again, unfortunate for him that he just ran out of tires at the end of the race, that he could not race Hamilton with. I think Alonso, in that sense, probably helped Sainz a little bit, stay in
Definitely.
that position longer, keep Hamilton behind
For sure.
him. Like I said, right at the start, I think after the accident and stuff, he was in a good position to fight for the win. But
Yeah.
over the pit stop, both Latifi and Tsunoda came out in front of him, and it took him a while to and actually a pit stop, right? Because I think he had to undercut those guys, and that's the way he
Mm-hmm.
came out in front of them.
Yeah.
So on lap 23,
Because he was
but
stuck behind him for a while.
he was stuck behind them for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So mixed fortunes for him. I mean, as usual, he gets a podium while not actually being on the podium
Yeah,
post race.
I think he's ahead of Leclerc on points also now.
Now, yes, now he is. Now
Yeah.
he is.
I mean, who would
By
have
3 points,
thought
I
that?
think. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, into summer break, Sainz ahead of Leclerc on points. I'm not sure there have been a lot of people who would have bet on that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think both of them have had their incidents and stuff, so I think it's pretty fair. I think Leclerc has had some more kind of crashes that have ruined his chances in terms of scoring anything. Monaco is kind of on his own accord, right? The crash.
Yeah.
And here he was taken out. So I think one thing that Sainz definitely brings is he brings a lot of consistency. I think Leclerc's highs are higher than Sainz's, but Sainz is always there, and I think he's been really really impressive. And he's been a, I mean, it was the shades of Vettel last year, right? Arguing with his engineer, about.
Yeah. Calling strategy, right? Yeah.
I mean, it's just like I forget that race engineer's name, that guy, but like, okay, understood. We are looking. Slow button on. It's like a robot with three things, and it's like there has to be somebody better than this guy,
Yeah.
right? Like the driver shouldn't be, going on this back and forth on strategy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It should be, it should be a decision that's made by the engineers, and they have a better view of things. But you have Sainz predicting that Hamilton's going to stop again and
Yeah. He,
arguing
he
about it.
clearly said it, saying
He was
that look out for
right.
Hamilton, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he was right. Yeah, I mean, to have that level of wherewithal to, it's not like they have a track map in front of them and they know where everybody is, right? To know that and to be able to read the race. And I think Hamilton was maybe like 5 or 6 places behind at that point.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah, Hamilton's coming and he's going to pit again. And they're like, no, we haven't heard anything on the radio. It's like, dude, they are going to pit again. Just trust me.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, he's been super impressive this year. And I'm a fan, so I'm happy to see him do well. And he goes about things without making a lot of statements and stuff. He just goes about his work.
Yeah.
And he lets the work speak for himself. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's thanks to him that now Ferrari's in third place ahead of McLaren.
Absolutely. I mean, when you think about it that way, Ferrari made the right decision too, right? They took a lot of flack for. I mean, you could argue that if Vettel had the security of
the same
seat and
points.
stuff,
Sorry, just to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Same points as McLaren, not ahead,
Yeah.
but anyway.
Yeah, same points. Yeah, for now. Are there more podiums? You got 3 and 3.
Yes, they tied for podiums, I think.
They tied for podiums, but I think Ferrari has McLaren also has a second place.
Second place as well.
Interesting. Well, let's go down to the lower points.
Yeah. But yeah, if it's about like Sainz's consistency, like you were talking, and things with McLaren and Daniel are the way they are, then honestly, I do see
Ferrari's going to get past. Ferrari's going to get past McLaren this year, and I do believe McLaren has a better car.
Yeah,
for sure.
Anyway, the other people I want to speak about was Gasly. Actually, was lucky, and like the way he avoided that first lap incident, I don't know if you noticed, was unbelievable. Like he had a good start, he was in a good position, but he avoided
Yeah.
that like brilliantly. But I mean, still couldn't really finish, I suppose, as high as he wanted to.
Yeah.
Alfa Romeo, sorry, Alfa Tauri swapping both drivers, but it didn't really seem to make that much of a difference, right?
It remind me because I think his start actually is what, because he had such a good start. That's actually what kind of made things more difficult for him
Yeah,
because he was so close to the carnage up front, right?
absolutely,
Did Sonata,
absolutely.
did Sonata get past Gasly after that first corner? So I can't
I
remember. I
I would like
swapped
to
it.
say so because I think
Yeah.
Gasly fell quite a bit because he had to take a very wide
Yeah,
line around
basically,
the.
he was on the outside.
Yeah,
And so, yeah, having that good start is kind of what hurt him. But yeah, I mean, they swapped him around. And I mean, this is a typical Pierre Gasly performance, right? That P5, P6, Poly.
hmm.
I mean, um, he was really, really close to Sergio Perez in qualifying. I don't remember the gap, but it
It
was
was
less than
hardly
10.
anything. It was hardly anything
It was less
between
than 10. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
between Leclerc, Gasly, and Perez. It was hardly anything.
Yeah. It was like
Yeah,
500ths of a second or something like
yeah.
that. So he was really, really close. And yeah, I don't know if that car is it's an interesting one because I look at them in the standings and I think they're ahead of Alfa Romeo. They're ahead of Alpine. Are they ahead of Alpine? No, they're
They
ahead of,
are
they're ahead of
they're
Aston.
they're ahead of both Aston Martin and Alpine.
They're one of those cars that I feel should be, or at least it appears that they should be fighting closer to Ferrari and McLaren than they are right now. I think that's a bit of a controversial statement, but all the way from preseason testing and seeing where Gasly is able to put that car, yeah, I mean, it could be, yeah, I
No,
think
man. I
they've got
think
one, you know,
I don't think it's controversial at all. I absolutely agree with you.
yeah,
I think they have the car,
yeah,
and to be honest, the driver to be up there
yeah,
fighting for that third
yeah,
place in the constructors, right? It's just call it bad luck, call it fate, whatever. Like it's just luck hasn't been on their side, right?
it's not happened. Yeah,
Yeah, it's just not happened. And every weekend, someone on the commentating team will talk about AlphaTauri and say that, look, they have a good race car. And if it's just
yeah,
that one good, clean weekend for Pierre Gasly,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And
And
hopefully
I
Sunoda
think
finishes in the points.
one
And
clean weekend for Yuki Tsunoda, right? One clean
yeah,
session.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like the other driver I thought who put in a brilliant performance was Mick Schumacher.
Oh yeah. I was really. I mean, so I watched Mick in GP2, both of his seasons, first season and the second season, and he's not come across as somebody who's and he's this very very soft spoken guy and stuff, but
Hmm.
like he's never come across as somebody who's like really really aggressive in defense. Like he's more of, but to see him against, I think Verstappen, right, got the
Verstappen,
brunt of.
absolutely. Yeah,
And these two guys know each other really, really well.
yeah.
Michael and Jos Verstappen are really, really close friends, and these two grew up together. And at that point, Mick knows that he's that Red Bull is a better race car, but he was like, no, I'm holding on to this position
It
because
was
we're racing
brilliant
for.
to watch, man. It was
He was
brilliant.
brilliant to watch, and he held them up for 11 laps,
Yeah.
right? And of course, Verstappen had a damaged car and stuff, but. Yeah, I think he also realized that it was an opportunity to show what he's got. Right? When you're at the back of the field, not many people are paying attention to you. I think he's pretty much gotten the measure of Mazepin in every race. Most of them, right?
Yeah.
I think on raw pace, it's very obvious that he's the faster driver. And so, I think this was his opportunity to show that he can, fight in the midfield, and he's got those defensive moves, and he's got some grit. So I think that'll do him some good. I'm sure Ferrari's watching, thinking about his development as well. Yeah, I was very impressed.
Yeah, man. So it was a entertaining race. I don't know if there's anybody else that you want to like particularly speak about or anything of
Do
that
we
sort.
talk about the Williams drivers? Do we talk about
Oh,
Latifi?
yes, George Russell. Yeah, and
Yeah, yeah,
Latifi both
yeah. Yeah.
finally in the points.
I think he's one of those drivers who doesn't get a lot of credit. Like, you know, if I was Franz Tost, And I'm seeing the way Yuki has been like, plowing that car into the wall every weekend. I wouldn't mind having somebody like a Latifi as a second driver. He's not going to be super quick, but he's going to be consistent. He's not going to do anything stupid. And I think Latifi seems like somebody who's kind of very well aware of his capabilities. I think he probably knows that he's not going to match George Russell on pace, but he keeps the car on the pavement. Like he does that really really well, and he drives within his limitations, and it's served him good so far.
Yeah.
He's not finished. Like I think he's definitely been out qualified by George Russell by a handy margin over their
Yeah.
2 years together, but race results he's not been that far off. So
Hmm.
he knows what he's doing, and so he needs a lot of credit for his performance. Of course, he made it through that carnage in turn one, ended up in P3, but he held it together. He still finished ahead of Russell, and so yeah, I was really really happy with that result. I think George Russell was just super happy to score a point too. I think he finished ninth, now eighth,
Now
right?
it. Now it. Yeah.
And Latifi seventh. So
Yeah.
I think Alfa Romeo get a point now too.
Alfa Romeo also get a point, very
Get a
much.
point.
Kimi,
So
Kimi 10th. Yeah.
yeah. So I think it was a good result for them, and I think yeah, like I said, I think it's been a long time coming. I think they've definitely been in that back marker kind of uh, group of teams. They've definitely been the one that's gone forwards. Like Alfa
For
Romeo and
sure.
Haas, they've just been languishing. But Williams, there seems to be some sign of life. Um, they've got a lot of investment now. They seem like a very professional organization also.
Yeah.
Like,
And they seem to
and
be on the move, right? Like on the
seem
march. Like,
to be on the move. There's an interesting story there. You never see them mess up a pit stop.
yeah.
Like they know what they're doing. They know that
Yeah.
they don't have the fastest car, but I think they're working on kind of getting everything organizationally aligned, and
Hmm.
they're working on the car in the background. So yeah, I was very very happy to see them in the points, and I think it's onwards and upwards for Williams.
Yeah, man. And that one move by George Russell around the outside on lap
Oh yeah,
34
yeah,
when he
yeah.
overtook Mick Schumacher. I think that was
Yeah.
brilliant, man. That was
That was
just
brilliant.
like,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he had also seen a bunch of other folks getting like stuck behind Mick
yeah,
Schumacher at that point. And
yeah,
he was like, I'm just gonna send it.
yeah.
And that's probably the overtaking move of the race for
Yeah,
sure.
probably. I completely agree. That was probably the overtaking move of the race. Yeah, I really hope Williams do well and we see like a Williams resurgence. And I hope this is the start of that. A team with so much history deserves to
Yeah.
be doing better in the sport. Yeah, wholly entertaining race going into the summer
Definitely.
break now.
Yeah.
Uh, so as usual, we come to the point in the podcast where I ask, what do you think is going to happen in the next race post the summer break in Belgium? What are your predictions? Who do you think is going to come out on top? Both Red Bull. Okay, Red Bull hasn't said it, but Mercedes is explicitly said that they're not developing their car. But do you think that's actually going to be the case when they're fighting for the championship so
Uh,
closely?
no, I mean, didn't you hear Hamilton's in the simulator all the time and
Yeah,
pushing the improvement? I think I don't see them as a team that's going to take their foot off the accelerator. But I think that, I mean, if you think about that car, right, the car is already, it's 95% of the car raced last season, right? So when they say that they're not going to develop the car any further, it's likely that the things that they can develop are just less and less and less, right? It's like, we found these little tweaks and we've got this much of performance, and they've been doing that now for a season and a half, right? And so it's probably that they're not able to figure out where to get that performance, and the only place they could probably get it is a power unit, and that'll be worth investing in because they can use that next year as well, right? So if I was Mercedes, that's what I would be doing, because everything else they've probably been like fiddling with that thing for a year and a half now. But I I don't know, this feels a lot like the 2017, 2018 seasons against Ferrari, and Mercedes just runs away with it in the second half. What was the race before? 2018 was the German Grand Prix the last race before the summer break. I think Spa was the first one after the summer break.
I think so.
And Vettel came back and won that, but like it was almost like the pendulum swung just before the summer break. And I think 2017 happened even sooner. I think Red Bull is a better organization than Ferrari. They know what they're doing, and they have more recent experience with winning championships. And I think Max is ready for it also. I don't think he has that baggage of like history and everything else that Seb probably had, prior. Max is just like, we're an energy drinks company. I don't care. I want to win a championship. Right? His attitude is different. So I don't think he's going to be very dented by by the event. I think he's going to be upset about it. But I see Mercedes as an organization on the up, and I think they're going to come out really, really strong at Spa. That's my prediction. So a win for Lewis at Spa, a solid P2 for Max, and a P3 for Bottas.
Can't argue with you there, man.
Yeah.
Maybe
really a P4 for Norris. And I feel like I'm bashing Sergio by going further down the order. But yeah, maybe like a P5 or a P6 for Sergio, and then maybe a Leclerc or Sainz fills in that other top 6.
Unless, of course, it rains in Belgium. That's something crazy.
Yeah, it rains then, I mean, I mean, even then, I think, even if it rains, I think putting money on Lewis is a good bet, right? Like,
no, but I agree with the podium, man. Like, I don't think I can say anything different from you. Like, I completely agree. I think Mercedes is very much on the up and up, and historically they've always had a stronger second half of the season than the first. And I mean, they've done it consistently for what, 6 years now? I think 7 years in a row.
Yeah, and I think the last race, of course, there was an incident and stuff, but Hamilton technically did qualify on pole, putting the sprint race aside.
Yeah.
Right, and this race too, he was on pole by a comfortable margin this time around. So it looks like they've also had the stronger package the last 2 races. Right? Good for the fans.
It is. I'm glad this season is so exciting, and it's not only for the first 2 places. 3 and 4 are also hot, like heating up, and that goes down to the wire. And now 5 and 6 is heating up. By the way, Alpine has gone ahead of AlphaTauri. Alpine is 5th.
Oh wow!
And AlphaTauri is 6th with with Esteban Ocon's win.
Alpine had like what 37 points or something this race. Like half of their points probably this race.
So 77. They're at 77 points right now, and like AlphaTauri is at 68. So
not bad for Alpine. They look the worst of those 3 at the beginning of the season.
Yeah. Anyway, Sai, thanks a lot for joining me and helping unpack this crazy weekend. And we'll see you soon after the break. I'm sure we'll.
Oh, for sure. Can't wait.
On another episode.
Yeah, definitely.
So thanks a lot for this, and see you.
Yeah. All right. See you, man.
That was this week's episode of the Late Night Drives podcast. Thanks for tuning in, guys. As ever, follow us on our social media feeds to get the latest updates. We are Late Night Drives on Twitter and Late Night Drives podcast on Instagram. See you in the next episode. Cheers. Hope you have a good night.